Greetings to our viewers, both here at home and around the world. I am Ajuri Ngelale, and you are most welcome to Africa's Future Leaders. On this edition of the program, we introduce you to a young woman by the name of Aisha Abubakar, who is making major impact on the special needs of young children in northern Nigeria. Let's take a look. For this young leader, planning and research is key to creating lasting change.
The reasons for the perpetuation of the Almajiri education system as it is currently practiced are multi-pronged, and we can't really know without research. So that's where research comes in. We need to carry out wide geographical research. So something like a needs assessment that tell us about the who, the what, the whys. It's easy to sit down and think that it's all about family planning. Yes, it may be, but that's just a tiny bit of the problem. The Almajiri education system enjoys some religious undertones, and that's why the parents are willing to send their children to the schools. There's also the issue of poverty. When I did my research, some of the reasons why these children had been sent to the schools was because there were too many children to feed at home, or because the mother had died and there was no one to take care of that child. The stepmother was unwilling to take on care of the child. And then sometimes also because the children are stubborn. So it's sometimes seen also as a correction facility. And that's where research comes in. We need to sit down with the stakeholders, the parents themselves, the Almajiris themselves, the government too, the religious leaders, the traditional leaders. That's where research comes in. Hopefully at the end of it, we'll come out with accurate, verifiable reasons, and then thus begins the path to long-term and sustainable reform.
Aisha believes that present and future solutions can be found in understanding the cultural history of northern Nigeria.
I'd like to take you a little bit back. I didn't even know it myself until I was doing a literature review for my project, that the Almajiri system predates the colonial times in Nigeria, and that it was a sustainable system at that time because there was some funding from the state, funding from the parents, funding from zakat. Zakat is that part of our income that Muslims are supposed to give yearly, stated at about 2.5% of their annual income. And then communities were small and agrarian at that time, so it was easy to manage the Almajiri education system. And then also there was state regulation. So there was an inspectorate that looked at the schools and reported back to the emirs. However, it was interesting to find during literature review that with the coming of the British and the deposition of some of these emirs, the schools then were taken out of the control of the emirs, and then they went into the hands of the malams. The malams are the teachers. Malam is an adulteration of the word mu'allim for teacher. So that was the beginning of the decline of the Almajiri education system to what we have now. Basically, an Almajiri is a boy, usually girls are not sent that far away, is a boy who has been sent far away from home to study the religious texts of Islam under the care of an Islamic scholar. And the parents usually think that the children learn better if they're sent far away from home, so that there wouldn't be any distractions and things like that. During research, I've found children from Niger Republic. I found children from Benin Republic whom I couldn't even interview because their Hausa was quite different from mine and we couldn't understand each other. So basically, the Almajiri system focuses on religious teachings. And in the past, it used to be a symbiotic relationship between the Almajiri school and the community, because they were the first propagators of literacy in the community. They taught the community to read and write Arabic in Hausa in Arabic, which is called Ajami, just like it is on the Naira notes that we have. Sometimes they also engaged in vocational activities here and there. But in its current state, the restriction serves as a disadvantage to the children, such that when they graduate from that school, they can't function in the secular setting, unlike what we have in formal schools where the education is an all-round education. I have also attained some Islamic religious education, which I did from my father's house. I didn't need to go very much far away from home. I did it from the comfort of my father's home. I'd also like to talk a bit about the Integrated Almajiri project, which President Goodluck Jonathan started during his tenure. So there were basically 3 models that were proposed at that time. So the first model was to incorporate conventional subjects into the existing Almajiri schools on Thursdays and Fridays, which is considered weekends in the Islamic setting. So we teach them some maths, English, social studies, integrated science on Thursdays and Fridays, so that they come out with an all-round education. The other model was in rural areas, especially where there are conventional schools like the UBE schools, to expand the curriculum to include more religious teaching, so that parents who are skeptical of their children learning too much of Western education can be encouraged that, okay, look, they're going to be learning the religious alongside the Western. That project started, but it's also not been sustained. It could be better than it is now.
Within this context, Aisha decided to become a solution.
There's no reform without research. There's no reform without statistics, because statistics tell us where we are, where we can be, what the problems are. And basically, there's been so much talk about reform of the Almajiri system, but I think the missing link is the evidence. What are the problems with the Almajiri education system as it is being practiced now? And that's where I come in to fill the gap. Over the years, I've provided accurate data on the ground. So during my master's in child and adolescent mental health, I looked at basically psychiatric morbidity amongst these children. Are there any psychological problems? And then when I was doing my fellowship for the West African College of Physicians exam, I decided to look into them again. I looked at their intelligence quotients, because when we're talking about integrating them into formal schools, we even need to know their cognitive capacity, their intellectual capacity. Do we need to train them before we integrate them into the schools? And I believe that the statistics I provide and will provide in the future will definitely go a long way in the reform of the system.
In the fight to enhance mental health treatment, the challenges confronting progress are many.
The very first one, and the one which impacts most, is stigma, like you've said. the stigma against our patients, the stigma against us, even the doctors who treat the patients. We're often called mad people. You hear things like, we're going to end up mad like them. And then secondly is the awareness. There's really not much awareness out there. You find instances where mental illness is ascribed to spiritual causes, and unfortunately the film industry has propagated this notion. Just before we started this, I was watching a movie and it's just there. Spiritual causes, someone does evil, and the next thing is madness. So we're really mitigating, we're really battling against these factors. And then one other thing might be the death of psychiatric professionals. So there are just about 150 psychiatric professionals in the country to cater to 180 million people. The ratio of psychiatrists to the population is definitely very, very low.
Embodied by the activities of this young leader, solutions are on the way.
The answer is multi-pronged. So with the issue of facilities, we need to integrate mental health to primary health care, to secondary health care, rather than the tertiary health care, rather than only tertiary health care. And really there are organizations that are helping in that aspect. So we have the Mental Health Scale Up Nigeria, which is integrating mental health into primary health care. There are 2 sites in Ibadan and Kaduna which have done very well in training community health workers, mid-cadre professionals in provision of mental health care. Training is good, training is adequate. However, remuneration is a problem which many doctors are facing in Nigeria, and that has led to brain drain. A lot of our colleagues, they're being trained and they move on to greener pastures in the UK, the US, Canada. When I went on to do my study for my master's, I decided to do something higher than that. Okay, I got a group of Almajiris and a group of public primary school pupils, because in itself, the findings in the Almajiris wouldn't really tell me much. But I felt if I compared with a group of pupils who were living with their parents, I would be able to make more cogent to get more cogent findings. And I found that there was really significant difference. I found about 75% of these Almajiris had one psychological problem or the other, compared to primary school pupils in which about 30% of them had one psychological problem or the other. And that's a very wide difference, ranging from things like depression, anxiety, enuresis, that's bedwetting. Because really these kids, they live a life of uncertainty. Their circumstances are very dire. They don't know where the next meal is going to come from. The prototype Almajiri, the prototype picture is a barefoot, unkempt child who is riddled with skin diseases, has nowhere to sleep, frayed old mats, old sofas, they're exposed to elements, they're exposed to reptiles and all that. So it was really dire, but it wasn't unsurprising, that finding of mine. And then when I was doing my fellowship, I also decided to look at their intelligence quotient, compared them with a group of primary school pupils again. What I found was, of the 10 sub-tests that I administered, the primary school pupils did better than the Almajiris in 9. And then I was very happy that in the 10th, they were at par, and that was in the mathematical abilities. It was a small glimmer of hope, but it's a glimmer of hope for me that, look, every child is born the same with potential. What makes or mars us is what makes or mar us are the circumstances in which we're born into, in which we grow up. And I think that with a little bit of nurturing, we can also get the Almajiris to to achieve their potential, to achieve their optimum development. During interviews, I found them very cooperative. When I was administering the IQ test, then they were very cooperative, and they would even come back to me later to ask me for the correct answers to the ones that they had got wrong. But then it was also a time that I saw them in their surroundings. I saw where they slept, I saw the water they drank, I saw where they kept their belongings, and it was very, very heartbreaking for me.
Aisha's earliest memories prepared her heart and mind to give hope to poor Ajuri children one day.
Growing up, I had a protected childhood. It was very happy. But then we coexisted with the Almajiris on the streets, and I would say that at that point, I didn't really take note of it as a problem. Perhaps because of the protection I enjoyed, I assumed they all had homes to go back to, they all had food to eat, they all had families to go back to. And only as I got older did I know that it wasn't so, that they're excluded and invisible. And the irony is that they're invisible despite us seeing them every day on the streets, but because it's become such an everyday sight, we just got used to it. As I got older and I became a professional, I could now look and reflect into some of the happenings in the society, my society particularly. And that was when I saw that really there's need for change, especially in the Almajiri sector. I was raised by two loving parents, a father, a mother. I'm the first of 6 siblings. I have 5 younger ones after me. My mother has done really well. She's a businesswoman. She's inculcated values into us. My father is also a wonderful personality. He's taught me really about independence. I remember growing up at the age of at the age of about 7 years, when he collected his salary, he would give me my school fees at the end of the month and teach me to hide it against when it was ready to be paid. And he would encourage me to go to the bank myself at about 7, 8 years to pay. I also remember him buying me my first car when I was in 400 level. I was about maybe 20, 21 then. He called me home and gave me the keys to a car. I was schooling at ABU Zaria then. He was living in Abuja. And he gave me the keys to the car and I said, "Oh, Dad, before now, the best I've done is to take my younger sister to school, just 1 kilometer away." And he said, "Baby, well, you're going to have to drive this car yourself to Zaria." I said, "No, I can't." And he said, "Yes, you can." He got someone to stay by my side. And I remember him giving me a very long list of do's and don'ts. Check your water in the morning, do all that. And I drove to Zaria safe and sound. That's the kind of person my father was. He made me very independent, and it's really helped me along the line. I'm able to function on my own with very little support and achieve so many things.
Aisha attributes many of her leadership traits to a mother who always cared.
One thing my mom would always say that I remember all the time is she would say, "You should be good, because if anything bad goes out there about you, how many people are you going to call to say, look, it wasn't true?" She says bad news travels very fast. How many people are you going to call to say, look, it didn't happen like that? So you just had to try to be good at all times. She also taught us to be very handy within the house. I remember at secondary school age, I was able to take care of the day-to-day activities in the house while she was out doing her business. and it's really helped me.
Aisha sees the absence of hope and the shortage in willing volunteers as responsible for pushing many children into social vices.
My senior colleague had researched these children in Maiduguri and found about 6 out of 10 were using psychoactive substances, and they were children or adolescents, so really not more than 16, 17 years of age, and sometimes as low as 6, 7 years of age. These substances are things like cannabis, what we would call wee-wee, things like volatile solvents, that's the solution, pawpaw leaves, lizard feces, very little alcohol because of the nature of the environment where the study was carried out. But then again, it's not unsurprising. These are children who are unsupervised for the majority of the time that they are on the streets. And they also have access to money sometimes during their begging rounds. And then again, because of the circumstances they find themselves into, sometimes they may need these substances to combat feelings of unhappiness, to combat feelings of loneliness, to combat sadness and other feelings like that. So that's the statistic as of 5 years ago. We can only imagine what it is today.
A huge part of solution building is the thought process that goes into it. Imagine not having access to the fullest measure of one's thought process in order to engage with society around us and in order to engage with potential solutions to the problems confronting us. This is exactly the challenge which Aisha Abubakar has risen up to confront. And we can take something tangible, something real, something genuine from her example. It's for us to know what that is and how we can best apply it to our communities surrounding us. I am Ajuri in Ngelale. Until next time, lead where you are, and followers will find you.